case you haven't gotten it, this talk is about trusting yourself. In fact, I found a quote that's perfect for this by Anonymous. When we walk to the edge of all the light we have and take the step into the darkness of the unknown, we must believe that one or two things will happen. There'll be something solid for us to stand on, or we'll be taught how to fly. So, Becky and I have Science of Mind magazines from forever. And every once in a while, I go through them and look to get an idea. And I saw this one, it's from, I think, 1999, that a friend of mine wrote an article, and it's kind of what kicked me into doing this message today. And so she starts it out by saying that there appears to be this mystical group that's responsible for all of our trials and all of our tribulations. She said it's the almighty and all-persuasive they. They say the economy is really bad. They say this is the worst flu season in ages. And she said, who are they? Why do we let them appear to run our life? And why do we give so much credence to they when we know we have all the answers within? That all we need to do is to develop more trust in who we are. So I want to do a couple of quotes from Ernest Holmes. One of them, he said, "You are the center of power in your life." Each one of us is the center of power in our own life. And in the text, he said, we suffer not because suffering is imposed on us, but because we're ignorant of our true nature. So, he's saying if we really get to know who we really are, what Ginny was saying about the heart, and we recognize that there's a divine presence within us, he's implying that we won't need to suffer. So I do a lot of reading for these, and I read something by a fellow named James Clear, who said, what we need to do is to let our values drive our choices, what we value. And he said, if you do that, if you let your values determine what your choices are going to be, you're much more likely to live a life that you're proud of rather than a life that you'll regret. And I was telling some people about this last night, an instance this week to speak to somebody who actually kind of stunned me when she talked to me about her, stunned me in a good way. So I got a new pair of glasses, and I had to go back a couple of days later to get them adjusted. And when I got back, the place was mobbed, so I had to wait 45 minutes to get my glasses adjusted. And when it came my turn, I was the only one left in the store. And there's two women that are there. It's JCPenney in the mall. And I know them both because Becky's bought glasses there before. And so one of them said to me, I really apologize for the wait, but our optometrist works here on Wednesdays, which is the day I was there, and Saturdays. On Saturday, she works here in the afternoon, but in the morning, she works at the Melbourne Mall. And she was there last week when the shooting occurred. And the police locked the mall down, and they wouldn't let her out till 1:30 in the afternoon. So she couldn't we had to cancel all of her appointments, and so they're all coming today on Wednesday. So we got into this discussion, and I don't know if all of you know, but what happened at the mall, there was two people, I guess, having breakfast, waiting to open up, an employee and the boss. And the employee was a woman, and her husband, a strange husband, came into the mall and started to shoot her. And the boss put his body over hers. And she lived, but the boss died, and the husband committed suicide. So the three of us started to talk about this. And the woman, they're both young women. One's probably in her 20s, and the other maybe early 30s, who's the boss. And I said, I thought, what a valiant act that man did. How many people would put their bodies over another person to save their life. And this young woman, her name is CJ, she said, I would. And I said, what do you mean? She said, I'm a young woman, and I have 2 small kids that I want to see grow up. But that lady, and she pointed to the other woman, she's my responsibility. If somebody came in here, I'd put my body on top of hers. And I looked, and I said, really? And she said, again, she said, I'm young, and I want to see my kids grow up. But I couldn't look her mother in the face if somebody came in here to do something, and I didn't try to protect her. She's my responsibility when she was here. And I thought, my God, I don't know if I would do that. I don't know how many, we talked about it at dinner, how many of us would do it? Maybe for somebody you love, but somebody, you know, and it just spoke to me about her values, you know, and if you don't have values, it's easy to get off course. If you don't know what you stand for, it's easy to be influenced by other people. You know, when we're young, we have to please people. You have to please your parents, your teachers, you know, your kid. But when you mature, when you grow older, you don't really have to do that. You can choose inner peace over not living your beliefs. We get to live our own dreams. We don't have to live somebody else's dreams. And when we make decisions that are more in harmony with what we believe, that's living an authentic life. And I was reading this woman, Suzanne Zaglio, and she talks a lot about an authentic life. She says, you know, others might not think that's the best life for you, but it's your decision. You're the one that gets to decide what your truth is. That's what living an authentic life is, knowing what your truth is, knowing what you fear, what you love, what dreams you've put aside, and to embrace all of ourselves. And then she gives an example, and I'll share the example with you. I mean, it's a hypothetical example of a fellow who has a 9-to-5 job, doesn't make a lot of money. He's got a girlfriend that he's faithful to. They have a monogamous relationship. And he doesn't have many vices, in part because he doesn't have a lot of money to have a lot of vices anyway. And she said he's, well, we're coming to this. He's stressed out by his job. And even though this might not be true, you know, in the bigger picture, certainly we don't believe it, he does, so it's his truth. He believes that his life is pretty much determined by his circumstances, okay? Not having a lot of money, job he doesn't like. And so he also feels he doesn't have much freedom, okay? And then he wins the lottery. Okay, this is a fake story. Don't get so excited, Laura. He wins the lottery. And now he has real choice. And what Suzanne says in the article is, that could really be confusing to him if he doesn't have any values. So now his entire life has changed. You know, gone from feeling life is running to him, now he's got a couple of $1 million. And if he doesn't have values, it's confusing because he's not sure of what he's going to do, of what he values. And she said, that's the test of character. That's the test of character. Will he do the right thing? And she defines the right thing as being what lines up with his values. So maybe after he wins the millions, he's got to decide what his values are. You know, we all, I spoke a little bit last week about it, intuition, and we all have this divine intuition, and yet how many of us, I know I do this still, how many of us, if we've got a big decision, don't go to all our friends and say, what should I do? Which then gives you 19 different answers, and you're, you know, really not sure what you're going to do. But the truth is we all have the ability to make those choices, to go within, to be silent, and to make the right choice for us at the right time. So a lady named Lisa Maria Jenkins wrote an article I read, and I want to tell you the premise of the article, then I want to give you an opportunity to think about an exercise she had that I thought was really interesting. So she says, you know, the people in our lives, the people we hang out with, really really sometimes, they sometimes are in part responsible for how we live and for how we show up in the world and maybe even our success. So she said, try this experiment sometime. Make a list of the 7 people you spend the most time with. I don't know why she did, well, 7's a spiritual number, I guess. But she said, make a list of the 7 people that you spend the most time with. And then go down and put a plus sign near the ones who are positive and supportive to you. The ones who lift you up. And she said, then go back and put a minus sign next to the ones who are difficult to take, the ones who put you down. And she said, it's really interesting that almost nobody has no minuses, okay? Everybody in the top 7 has some minuses. And then this really blew me away. She said the minuses are usually people you have long-term relationships with, like your best friends and your spouse. I thought, why would you hang out forever with friends or a spouse that brings you down? But that's who she said it is. And the purpose of doing the exercise, if you do it, I really thought a lot about it, is it makes you aware of who you spend your time with. And if you really want to grow spiritually, you need to give time to the people that give you something back, not take something away from you. And she said, you know, you may have to at times detach and love some people from afar. And she said, you know, usually, and sometimes if people come, you know, and they're really close, and you're telling them what you want to do, and they don't like it, you can get into an argument or get defensive. And she had this really wonderful sentence that you could tell people. If you go to somebody, you tell them an idea you have, and they're negative about it. I really liked it. She said, all you have to say, and they won't get them defensive, is, thanks for sharing your thoughts and feelings, but this is what works for me. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and feelings, but this is what works for me. So, Joan Borisenko is a writer that I've talked about a lot. And in one of her books, she said one day she woke up and she had a lump on her breast. And she became really anxious. And she went through a lot of what-ifs. All of the worst things. If she got a good thought, she put that one away because she was really into awfulizing. She said, that's not her word, it's mine. I got it from somewhere. I don't remember who, but the reason I mention it is she came through this on the other side in a really good place. And it's too long to do the whole, everything she did, but she came up with some great affirmations that I wanted to share about when you're in tough times and how you can realize. So I just wanted to read a couple of her affirmations. I am a child of the light. The wisdom of the universe is present within me. In facing adversity, I can find my freedom. I can make up now. I can wake up now. I can choose to believe in love over fear. I am given the circumstances I require for my awakening. Every situation seen rightly contains the seeds of freedom. And the last one is, all the help I need is available to me. So Tammy Keys is a woman who was a lawyer. I've talked about her before too, who left law to write books. And in her latest book, she tells, when her first book came out, she went to some kind of conference, and there was a publisher speaking. And he was saying things like, you know, if a book doesn't go well in the first 6 months, we can it. And he was not a very positive person. And again, these are my words. She made him sound like very arrogant and dismissive. And it kind of took her down. And she refers in the book, she refers to him as a dark God. A dark God. And she defines that as someone who speaks with false certainty. And she said they represent the world. So those are the days that Duchess Dale talked about in her article. And she said they claim authority and suck up the air around them. And she said that Don Miguel Ruiz calls these people black magicians. And she gives an example from her own life. And the example is when she was a senior in college, she wanted to apply to Harvard Law School. And her college counselor said, don't apply to Harvard, you won't get in. He said, you got all the right stuff, but it's a no-go. He said, I looked up the history of this school, and Harvard Law School has never accepted anybody from Brooklyn College, except if it was an affirmative action entrance. So don't bother, you're not going to get in. So she goes home, and she's Jewish, and she goes home and she said, so I tell my Jewish dad that the experts told me I'm not getting into Harvard Law School, and his response was, experts, schmexperts. You apply. And he pushed her, and then she also got grease all over the application, and it was the only one she had, and she sent it in, and 3 weeks later got a letter accepting her. And she said the impossible had become possible. She said, dare to have your own adventure. And that was the point. You know, she didn't need to listen to somebody else who knew the history, but he didn't know her and didn't know what's possible. So Raymond Charles Barker was a contemporary of Holmes. In fact, Jack used to go to his church, right?
Yes.
What'd you tell me the first week you went there were like 8 people, and then within a year he had thousands, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he founded RSI.
Yes.
And on one of his books, he said, we need to decide what is really so and what is apparently so. What is really so and what is apparently so. And he said, there's a really big difference. He said, the depth of your spiritual potential is really so. And he said, you can ignore it and you can deny it, but it remains so. He said, what may seem apparent is that we were born to suffer and we die with no other purpose. But one of them is looking within and the other one is looking without. So we say, you know, what's really so is when we look within, and what's not really so, what's apparently so, is when we just base our life on appearances, what's appearing to us externally. So I want to close with something from Howard Thurman, who's a modern-day mystic, and it's titled "The Seed Upon the Wind." He said, man without God is a seed upon the wind. He is a victim of the currents of life that carry him where they will, with a bland unmindfulness of purposes and ends which belong to him as a living, thinking, feeling creature. It means that such a man has no sense of center. He takes his clue to all meaning and values from the passing moment, the transitory event, the immediate issue of the day. He is at home nowhere because he is not at home somewhere. I love that line. He is at home nowhere because he is not at home somewhere. The Master speaks of this in his direct question. What would a man give in exchange for his soul? Thank you for being here. God bless you. So glad to have you here.